Hello folks, welcome to OTD, also known as All in the Deck, where you can get all sports you need in 10 minutes. My name is Adam Orduna. This is my mom, Gina.
He is the journalist.
She's the enthusiast.
She is so enthusiastic because we are in the heart of college football right now.
Yes, we are week 3, or you could say week 4 for some teams, but this is week 3, going into week 3, as we are now getting into where we've seen teams play. Teams have had 2 or 3 weeks of football, and so you kind of know who's good, who isn't good. You're still early enough in the season, though, to where there's still some things that can get ironed out and worked out. But for the most part, you kind of have a decent idea of who's good and who isn't. And so we're going to break down the AP poll, top 25, and then the USA Today's top 25.
They're very close. But
very similar, but we do want to kind of highlight where teams are at right now. So I'll go through the first 10, and then you'll go through the second 10, and then I'll finish out. For the AP top 10, okay, we've got Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, USC, Penn State, we've got UW, Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, and then Wisconsin.
And the AP then has Florida State at 11, LSU at 12, Georgia at 13, Louisville at 14, Auburn at 15, Tech at 16, Miami at 17, K-State at 18, Stanford at 19, and TCU at 20.
Right, and so that's pretty good, top 20 right there. And then to finish out, TCU, you said at 20, yes. Yeah. Then we've got Washington State still hanging around there at 21. South Florida still hanging in there at 22. Tennessee's hanging in there at 23. And then you've got is that Florida at 24, and then UCLA at 25.
And the only difference is USA Today has Oklahoma and Clemson switched to 2 and 3. Ohio State and Oklahoma State switched at 8 and 9. And then they've got Florida State at 10, LSU at 11, and Wisconsin at 13. Right. Then they've got Tech at 15, Miami at 16, and Auburn sitting at 17.
Right.
And then in the top, the bottom half, they've got South Florida and Washington State flipped.
Right.
But at number 24, they've got Utah in there, Florida at 25, and they drop UCLA.
Right.
So there's, UCLA is kind of what you'd sit on the bubble. I would not have put Utah in there. Yes, they fought it out with BYU, but come on, I wouldn't have put them in there. But they obviously got a few votes out of the USA Today poll, and there you go.
Right, and so it's going to be flip-flopping a lot, and so you're going to see more Big 12 teams. You're going to see some more Big 10 teams. You'll see some more ACC, SEC. You're going to see maybe a group of 5 team come in there besides South Florida.
Right.
So it's going to fluctuate quite a bit here. But this is kind of where we're at through week 2. Teams like K-State haven't really been tested too badly yet, so
they're just moving up 1 or 2 little places. There we go.
Taking care of business because that's who they have on the schedule. So we will start to see some more teams either move up or move down. But we just wanted to kind of get that out there to kind of say that, hey, this is where we're at up to this point. Now, the big thing that we want to talk about is the games that took place over this weekend. Now that we have the rankings out, what are some things that are on your mind that happened over the weekend with some of these games, some of these juggernaut games? Because, every week there's at least 1 or 2 juggernaut games that you want to tune in and watch for.
Well, for me, the big thing, obviously we highlighted the USC Stanford game, and I called that correctly. Thank you very much. But what was on my mind, what stands out to me, was the Oklahoma-Ohio State game.
Yes.
We both called Oklahoma, I believe, if I'm correct. But I don't think anybody saw a 31-16 beatdown at Ohio State.
Actually, I think we both claimed Ohio State.
Oh, we did?
Said Oklahoma was going to give them a good game. Yes.
Why would I ever pick against the Big 12?
Yes.
What was I thinking?
Well, I think that goes to the point of that game is that all the hype and all the noise for Ohio State, Urban Meyer, they're at home. They throttled Oklahoma last year in Oklahoma. And so it was kind of like, hey, this is going to be a good Ohio State team. And Oklahoma had something to say about that.
Well, Baker Mayfield had a lot to say about it.
Correct.
And let's be clear, last year Ohio State came to, I was going to say Soonerland, but came to Oklahoma and won and sung their fight song or their alma mater, at the school, which is not unusual.
Right.
Baker Mayfield took that very personally.
He did.
And you talk about a Rough Rider.
He's a Rough Rider.
He's a good-looking young man. He's a quarterback. He's a Rough Rider. If you're going to be in a fight, I want Baker Mayfield on my team.
Yes.
And he took it very personally. And when they got done, he took that OU flag and ran it all over. I mean, and then tried to plant it in the middle of the big O in the middle.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it was turf, so it didn't plant very well. But I thought that was emotion and passion. When you whoop a team that is #2 in the country preseason out of the first week, and it's 31-16 in their house.
Right.
First of all, I think Ohio State got exposed. I really do like JT Barrett, but something's off.
Yes.
He was overthrowing. He was underthrowing. When you see a quarterback overthrowing, he's jacked, his arms hot, you know, adrenaline, whatever.
Yep.
He's knocking stuff in the dirt. Like, it just wasn't, you know. And where's the Ohio State defense? Oklahoma put up 31 points. For an elite team, you never want to let anybody get out of the 20s on you.
Right.
Ever. You know, they gave up 31 points.
Well, I think Ohio State has been struggling for the last couple years. I think they've had a lot of guys go to the NFL. I think they've had some really good recruiting classes as of late, but those guys are getting drafted and are going to the league right away, and so they're not sticking around. And so what you do have is a lot of younger guys or newer guys. Maybe you've had some redshirt sophomores that maybe haven't played right away, and so now this is their first time really playing. When they played Indiana, they didn't look that good either.
No, that's Indiana exposed some holes in there too.
And so
they just outlasted them on depth.
Correct. And so now you got Oklahoma, who's got a major chip on their shoulder, feeling like they've got a lot to prove. Lincoln Riley's a new, hot, and young coach that is ready and willing to prove to everyone that he deserves to be the head coach at Oklahoma. And I just think, like you said, JT Barrett has been there for, it seems like forever.
Seems like 6-7 years.
After that freshman/sophomore year, it's kind of been hard. You know, he had to battle it out with
Cardell
Jones, and then Braxton Miller.
Who
was
still there.
So there's this three-headed monster at quarterback, and JT Barrett was kind of the guy that outlasted them, but he really hasn't improved much since then.
And that was the term I was going to say. I think he just outlasted him.
Right.
Cardell Jones could actually technically still be there.
Correct.
Right
and so
now.
It's one of those situations where Ohio State, I think, is still a good team, but I think there's a lot of hype on them, and I think they finally are starting to kind of get knocked down, which I'm okay with that, especially if a Big 12 team is taking them down. And Oklahoma right now looks really, really good.
Well, and, you know, obviously we're not the only people who think that, because they still stayed in the top 10.
Yes,
and they'll work their back. I will say this, you were right, they kind of got exposed last year because they lucked out of that Michigan game.
They lucked out of the Michigan game, and then they got blown out against Clemson. Shutout, not just blown out, shutout in that Clemson game for the playoffs. So
I think it's been coming, Buckeye fans. Like, this shouldn't necessarily be a surprise to you.
Right. Again, when you just have so many guys get drafted to the NFL, and a lot of teams have that going on too.
That's
but I mean, you kind of see that with Michigan this year. Their team is
but I'll tell you what,
Urban
Meyer is nobody's John Harbaugh. He will that team to win. Jim Harbaugh, sorry.
Exactly.
Johnson, the Ravens.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of some unfortunate games, you know, our Nebraska Huskers went up to Oregon and once again embarrassed us on TV. I mean, it wasn't a 60-point blowout, but most of the game, it was just all of us sitting there with our head in our hands.
Yeah.
My husband and my brother texting each other in a group, texting all of us in a group text.
Yes.
We don't tweet it out because we don't need everybody to see our dirty draws, but it was ugly the whole time. I am not a Mike Riley fan. I respect the man. I'm sure he's very nice. We are not an elite team right now. Nebraska Cornhuskers are not an elite team right now.
Yeah.
And part of it is we don't have an elite coach.
Yeah.
And until we get that coaching thing fixed, we're not going to be anything but where we are, middle of the pack, above or below the midline in the Big Ten.
Well, and I think that's to be said for a lot of schools right now. Texas A&M is kind of going through that with Kevin Sumlin.
It's true.
Brian Kelly right now at Notre Dame. You know, there are some programs right now that
I'm booing Brian Kelly.
Expectations to be at a top 10 team, a national championship contender every single year. And so when you're 8-4, 7-6, or whatever the case may be,
and when your losses are embarrassing losses on national TV, Notre Dame, A&M, Nebraska, you got problems.
And those are some of the elite programs in all of football history, to be quite honest.
Think about it.
National championships, Heisman Trophy winners, All-Americans. Some of the best football players to ever come through have come through Notre Dame,
storied and historic programs. Notre Dame, A&M, and Nebraska.
Yes,
and all of them have, to me, mediocre coaches who are taking their teams into mediocre status.
Correct. And you would like to think that those coaches could get it figured out. But when you look at a guy like Jim Harbaugh, who's in his 3rd year, who to me I thought last year should have been in the
Final
college
Four
football playoff, at least in that Final Four position. You know, in 3 years, he has turned that program all the way around.
Well, let's talk about the first year. That defense went from 126 to a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
He went from, I don't know, 3 or 4 wins to 10, was it 9 or 10 wins?
Right.
Year 1.
First year.
Year 1.
Exactly.
With the same athletes that couldn't win the year before.
Right.
So don't talk to me about, oh, it's athletes, this and that. College is a coach's game.
Yes.
Your job is to scheme and put the right people in the right place.
Right.
So I'm sorry.
Well,
Kevin Sumlin,
yeah.
you probably got to go.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly, you definitely have to go.
Yeah.
And Mike Riley, bye-bye.
It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on this. The college football season just kicked off. Like, we're going into week 3. I'm excited because this is what we get to talk about almost every day. So.
And we're not passionate about it at all.
So we just want to see good football. But with all that being said, please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page. Type in OTD. And we want to say we'll see you again, folks. Thanks for watching.